Early onset Alzheimer's disease is the topic that I will be discussing today. What is early onset Alzheimer's disease? Well, it's an autosomal dominant inheritance disorder. It's passed down from generations. It's otherwise known as familial Alzheimer's disease. It is a rare and uncommon form of Alzheimer's disease, affecting ages 30s to their mid-60s. Early onset Alzheimer's disease is found in all ethnic groups. It affects males and females equally. The frequency is 1 in 10,000, and it affects approximately 200,000 individuals in the USA. It represents less than 10% of the population. It can be very devastating to a family. Now that we know what early onset Alzheimer's disease is, let's take a moment to think about what this individual will look like. What is their phenotype? Well, it's an individual who's of young age, ranging from ages 30 to their mid-60s. More than 1/3 develop language and visuospatial impairment. When we think about the language impairment, it's basically the issues surrounding word finding. They have false starts, they have issues with repetition, and they're unable to repeat long sentences. As far as the visuospatial impairment, it's basically they have issues with telling where objects are in space and how far objects are apart from each other. The MRI shows posterior cortical atrophy, and the typical neurofibers, tangles, and amyloid plaques are found in the brain. With this specific type of Alzheimer's, the memory is relatively spared. As with late onset Alzheimer's, which what we most typically know about, they have issues with atrophy in the temporal region. Genetic mechanisms for early onset Alzheimer's disease. There are 4 Alzheimer's gene mutations that are inherited. They include amyloid precursor protein, preselin 1, preselin 2, and APOE4. A mutation of amyloid precursor protein, APP, is the first gene mutation that was found back in 1987 to be inherited. This leads to toxic levels of amyloid peptides in the brain, forming plaques, causing death of the neurons in the brain. It is found on the long arm of chromosome 21. There are more than 50 different mutations. The second gene mutation was found in 1992, which is known as preselin 1, found on chromosome 14, which is the most common cause of early onset Alzheimer's. There are more than 150 of these identified. The third gene mutation, found in 1993, which is known as preselin 2, found on chromosome 1. There are at least 11 mutations of this gene which causes early onset Alzheimer's disease. APO34, discovered in 1993, is known to have the highest increased risk of having early onset Alzheimer's disease. It is found on chromosome 19. But it's important to keep in mind that having these gene mutations doesn't mean that every individual will have this disorder. However, they may develop early onset Alzheimer's before age 65. Sometimes, the cause for this disease may be unknown as well, and that's what is so troublesome about it. Here on this slide shows the diagram of those chromosomes that are related to the mutations. We see here chromosome 21 for APP, chromosome 14 for preselin 1, chromosome 1 for preselin 2, and chromosome 19 for AOE4. Management strategies include medications such as acetylcholinesterase inhibitors, such as donepezil, galantamine, and rivaroxaban, which are the same medications used to treat late onset Alzheimer's. Even though these medications target memory, they can help with posterior cortical atrophy. Some coping strategies include seeking counseling, joining the Alzheimer's Association, and just linking up with families that are suffering through the same process. Additional research is needed, definitely in this case. This is a disease that's rare and uncommon, and definitely additional research is needed. I think basically that the individuals who have been diagnosed with this disorder need to participate in clinical study trials because it's important to find out what can be done to help this individual and people with this disorder. And unfortunately, at this time, there is no cure. And the same thing with late onset Alzheimer's. There is no cure. But we can always hope that down the line with genetics and genomics that a cure can be found. The ethical, legal, and social implications. Early onset Alzheimer's disease, it has its social stigmas associated with it, because when we think of an individual who has Alzheimer's, we think of an elderly person. You don't think of someone young. This can lead to depression, disbelief. I mean, if we put ourselves in that individual's place and say, wow, I'm 30-something years old and I have early onset Alzheimer's disease, what do I do? How would you feel? This can affect the family. This can put a lot of stress on the caregivers. If this individual is the breadwinner, this can affect the family financially. You can even lose your job. You can have to find other ways to support your family. You may need to look into such things as your pension, your savings account. You may have to get financial advisors involved. Also, we think about when you don't have your job, you're going to lack health care. COBRA is an option, but we all know COBRA is very expensive. There's things such as ACA. There's Medicare. There's FLMA. All these things are available to help out financially. That individual will most likely be able to get SSDI and SSI, because Social Security has now made available to individuals who have been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. So this is very, very traumatic for a family and can lead you feeling despair. And we hope that all these different options are available out there that can help